Back in 2021, approximately 20% of Manitoba's population were immigrants. Just last year, Manitoba welcomed almost 41,000 newcomers to the province. Each person who arrives brings stories and experiences which are incredibly beneficial. However, sometimes their voices aren't always heard. That's where the Ethnocultural Council of Manitoba comes in, a representative body that's a collective voice for all ethnocultural community groups. Let's get into it.
So my name is Kathleen Byron. I am a project manager actually with Immigration Partnership Winnipeg, but one of the really cool things about IPW is that we're sort of we build a network of organizations that we work with, and the Ethnocultural Council of Manitoba started through Immigration Partnership Winnipeg as a sort of a pilot project that just ended up taking off and becoming its own organization. So I'm over there just supporting all of our projects and the staff that are over at ECCM. So I just sort of do all the oversight for it, but it is its own organization. We have our own board and own staff, our own office, and everything like that. And yeah, I'm just over there overseeing things.
I mean, that's really cool. Different organizations collaborating and really becoming their own thing to help fill in the various different areas here in Winnipeg.
Yeah, and specifically within ethnocultural communities, I think you hear words like diversity and things like that to talk about our city and our province, and lots of that have to do with different ethnocultural communities, and it is very vibrant here in Winnipeg. And one of the cool things is that when people sort of come and choose to make Winnipeg or Manitoba their home, they find that sense of community again with people that maybe they knew back home. And we found that, those ethnocultural communities provide so much supports in terms of settlement and integration and all of that. So being able to amplify those voices and help build sort of that community aspect here in our city is really cool. So I think ECCM has sort of been a leader in that.
I was talking with a entertainment group that was holding an event, and we got talking about the diverse musicians here in Winnipeg, and we started down a tangent talking about, Winnipeg is really special, and it's much more diverse than maybe you first realize, just being like a prairie city in the middle of Manitoba.
Yeah.
But if you go to Osborne Village or the Exchange District or the North End, there's so many different parts of the communities that have so many different and exciting restaurants, stores, places like that. And I think it's important for all residents to not only be aware of the diversity, but be there to support it, because we want to ensure that whether it's Asian supermarkets or a Sudanese restaurant or things like that can thrive here in the city.
Yeah, for sure. And that's growing. And I think that, we always talk about this wealth of knowledge that comes with when people choose to move here. And I think, there's so much skill, there's so much talent, there's so much knowledge in individuals that are from around the world. And then when they come to and choose to settle here in Winnipeg or in Manitoba, they bring that with them. And I think being able to foster an environment where they can thrive and then share all of those skills, talents, and knowledge, it just makes for such a better city and such a better province for us. I think that's one of the things, ECCM was founded on that. We were founded on bringing together community to learn from one another. We call it culture sharing. We started something called a Stronger Together dinner that is basically just community members coming together, sharing cultural food, sharing dance, sharing music, and building connections with one another and just learning from one another. And that dinner grew into what the organization is now, which is a council of over 30 ethnocultural leaders. We're empowering different ethnocultural associations that are forming, and having them be able to then go back and provide support to their own community so that it's not just big like settlement organizations that are doing that. Now it's actually the communities feeling empowered enough to make their own associations, make their own organizations, and really provide legitimate supports to their community members, that's recognized by governments and systems. So that's really cool.
Continuing on that, the work we're doing here at Multicultural, when we're getting different ethnocultural communities down to share their stories, and we have more people coming down, more people talking about new exciting events or news, and it's just so beneficial. Like for myself, like learning from people who are coming here, having those conversations. I've recently made a friend who moved from China, so we've been having a great time. I'm talking to him about Canada and things that he never knew. Like he had this different impression of what Canada was before getting here, and I'm learning about his life there. He moved from what he called just oh yeah, my hometown, and you think, oh yeah, it's going to be a small place, but it was of like 20 million people there,
Yeah.
which is like a completely different realm. That's almost everyone in Canada in one city.
Yeah, which is wild. I think when you think about scope or you think about what those terminologies, like what my understanding of that is versus someone else. And I think that that's something that's you like touched on like a really good point, is that dispelling of like myths and like preconceived notions. That's something that we work like through Immigration Partnership Winnipeg and with ECCM, is really to debunk those myths, right? Because it is true, you come when you choose to settle here in our country or province or city, you're bringing your own thoughts and your own ideals of what you think place is. And there is lots of learning to be done and lots of unlearning to do as well. So I think we really want to support that and learn from others as well, right? Like you said, to think that a town to somebody is 20 million people, like that is going to have its own set of things to think about with in terms of job, like seeking things like jobs. Like what does that look like in a town of 20 million versus what we think is a town of like 10,000, right? So
Exactly.
I think there's just a whole bunch of things like that. So we definitely try to always keep an open ear and always keep an open mind in terms of working with communities that way. And yeah, and hopefully like ECCM is able to build some bridges between communities, maybe that in one part of the world that maybe we're not coexisting and are now here in our city. So we want to make sure that, that maybe conflicts that were once somewhere else aren't brought here. And if they are, there are ways that we can support and address those.
Welcome here. How are you two doing today?
Good, how are you? Sorry we're late.
I'm doing well. No, it's all good. We were just talking a little bit about how beneficial it is for having diversity of thought and diversity of people who come here, and they learn from us and we learn from them.
Yeah,
sort
absolutely.
of thing. Fantastic. Well, welcome here. How about we just start with a quick introduction, both your names and your role at ECCM.
Yeah, awesome. I will go first. My name is Piper. I am the current project coordinator for the project that the two of us are working on, which is the Healthy, Safe, and Violence-Free Relationship Project. So this project's all about intimate partner violence among ethnocultural newcomer communities. And it's been going on since December 2021. And then this is my better half.
Hi, my name is Beatrice. I am the community consultant for the same project, which is Healthy, Safe, and Violence-Free Relationships. That's looking at intimate partner violence within the ethnocultural communities. Yeah, I'm Piper's bitter and better half.
Welcome here. I guess just to kind of touch on that, was that program started during the midst of COVID because people, were so close and didn't really have anywhere to go, potentially during conflict situations?
Not to repeat anything that Kathleen said, but definitely just like the foundation of ECCM was built to advocate as a collective instead of different ethnocultural communities going about things separately. So there was definitely, as we all know, 3 years out, a rise in intimate partner violence during the pandemic. And as you just said, Ryan, like no available resources, like a shortened amount of beds, of safe spaces. You even think for youth, like community centers closing. So I think it was really a need that community spoke about, which brought to light applying for this project.
So what sort of things are you doing and talking about? Started in 2021, how has it kind of changed now as we're heading into 2024?
Our target audience is the ethnocultural communities, obviously. And then we had different groups of people that included women, men, the youth, and the ethno-queer, that we all had an opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with and get to understand what's going on. Is it the lack of understanding of what violence is and what is termed as violence, especially when you make the transition to Canada as a newcomer? And what has changed is that I can say there's a little bit of misconception about how communities view violence to begin with, and what is needed for that kind of learning to happen within newcomer communities and with the newcomers that have an opportunity to come to this amazing land. And the bridging that should be happening, and with the different respective bodies that also should be at the forefront of having these conversations. Because one thing that came out is a lot of community members felt that they are not included, they're not part of decision making when it comes to policies in different capacities, whether that's in the settlement sector, whether that's in employment, whether that's in education. A lot of all this microaggressions do give rise to the problem that is IPV. You know, we come from our amazing countries with such accomplishments as lawyers, as doctors, as scholars. But when we get here, it's regarded as it's non-Canadian experience.
That must be incredibly frustrating, right?
It is. And so you have moved here with your whole family, and you and your partner have probably been already arguing about why don't you go first and get things moving. And then because I'm such a nag, you know, I twist his arm and say, no, we are coming along, only for us to get here and go like, you are right. You really should have come here before I did, because you're no longer a doctor in Canada, because your experience apparently is not fit for Canadian consumption, or it's not fit for Canadian society. And so what does that do to a relationship? What does that do to your own personal mental health? And how do those relationships survive out of that need? And imagine that was during COVID. So everything is shut down. People are either losing jobs or having their hours taken away. Getting a job is not as easy. And so we are in close proximity. We are both frustrated. People from home think we are living large, and their needs have not decreased. Our responsibilities to them have probably increased, because we have come to a land that is flowing with milk and honey. And so that in itself puts a lot of pressure on relationships. And so as we met with all these groups that was about 30 consultations with different ethnocultural communities, a lot of things came up. Language is a problem. We are not going to access services because no one speaks my language, and the pressure to learn English, and you're not having the pressure to understand my culture, to understand my language, to cater to my needs is a problem. So it's a lot, but we are grateful that there's a glimpse of hope, because I know for a fact that the settlement sector has been working quite hard in making sure that ethnocultural communities are represented. We do have translation services. We do have people that are volunteering. We do have people that are working one-on-one with ethnocultural communities. And I mean, you leave your 9-to-5 job and then go to the community and act as a liaison to that community. So we have that. So there's a glimpse of hope. It's one step, but it's a step among many. other steps that people cannot do it alone. We need everybody in the private sector. We need everybody in the settlement sector and all the other sectors, especially now that Canada has embarked on a journey on being this very diverse space of welcoming people from each and every corner of the world. I think it's important that policies are revised. Cultural lenses are important when it comes to how people solve conflict from where they come from. Are you able to take your time and find out what those look like? Are you able to entertain the thought that perhaps those should make it to our lawmakers' policies? How do we ensure that people, when they get here, are not told their culture is null and void and you're now Canadian and everything you do is Canadian, right? And so it's a lot. So I'll leave it at that.
Well, Kathleen, that kind of ties into what we were talking about before, learning from each other, like kind of breaking down misconceptions and misinformation. And from that aspect of, yeah, we need more immigrants and newcomers to be voices in terms of policy making. Like, I couldn't even start to understand, how I should develop a settlement process to ensure that someone coming over from a different culture, a different continent, would be able to come here and adjust better. And as you're mentioning, jobs not being recognized and the frustration that must bring, like, yeah, there probably has to be some more, there needs to be more collaboration on that, because there has to be some way in order to have the time, years and years of time. Like if someone's a doctor, like, they're dedicated to that craft. There has to be some way to intermingle their education within Canadian ways. And
Yeah, we talk about it in terms of credential recognition is what we call it, and understanding and really placing value in lots of I will say like the settlement sector specifically, but we're also trying to work with lots of other sectors like employment or healthcare or education to look at the value of lived experience. And similarly to what you just said, that understanding that you can't develop a program for a community that you have no connection or understanding of what their journey or what their lived experience is, because what you're putting into that program development or that policy can have no relevance if you don't actually understand who it is that you are developing it for. So one of the things we try really hard to is to amplify those voices of the communities that policy or program is going to serve. So, if you're developing something for newcomers that are brand new to the country, do you understand language levels? Do you understand housing? Do you understand what their settlement journeys are from back home to here? Are you understanding mental health? Like, there's so many aspects of it. So ECCM sort of brings it down to like the basic level of like, ask community, go into the communities and ask them what it is that they need and what barriers they're facing. And that's how the project that Piper and Beatrice are attached to with ECCM, and lots of ECCM's projects come out from just asking community. The council will get together and like Piper mentioned, it's that collective voice, because we can work with, African communities, or we can work with Asian communities, but instead of working in silos and duplicating work, why not bring them together and say, you know what, you're both facing the exact same issue. We can address it on a larger scale with more ethnocultural communities if we work together. So that's sort of the basis of the council itself, and then the work that it's trying to do. And then trying to ease some of those frustrations. Like credential recognition is a huge one. You've got so many skilled workers that are coming into our country and then entering things like low income jobs or low paying jobs that are not recognizing their skills and knowledge. And, again, those policies and programs that we're creating to get them through, you have to understand there's lots of other factors that come in. There's, family obligations, there's, education levels, there's all of that stuff. So it's again, like, have you consulted with the actual communities that those policies and programs are supposed to be serving before you're developing them? Lots of times, no. So I think then we kind of come in there and say, okay, well, we'll provide you with the supports to talk to those communities, but you have to listen, and then you can adjust from there.
Piper, maybe you can touch on this one to kind of get your perspective out there. Like, we've talked a lot about these different programs and the significance of them in supporting the community. Programs such as the IPV one, as well as the recent credit and debt management. What are some other programs and initiatives that are offered through ECCM? And maybe what are some areas that need to be continued focused on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good question. And what Beatrice was describing, like the project itself, it started as 30 conversations with different ethnocultural community members. We were able to go out into rural Manitoba and see kind of what are then other issues that are facing community in Brandon and Portage la Prairie and Nipua. And from those conversations, we then began to see the emerging themes such as financial abuse or like financial literacy. Mental health was a huge one, as well as just like safety planning as a whole. So what our team then did was identify these themes and partner with organizations who are currently on the front line doing that work. So the session that we had, what was it, a week and a half ago, was with Seed Winnipeg. So we've been doing an active partnership with them. So 5 different sessions on different topics, such as debt management, budgeting. We've also partnered with Shade Winnipeg. They're the Safe Housing and Direct Empowerment. And that is, frontline work of women and ethno women especially, who are actively fleeing violence and creating those safety plans. Our other partners are Aurora Family Therapy, who it's been really unique to see the programs that they offer. They offer a breadth of different, just like social programming. So we were able to go to some of their programs that they have up and running that have groups who have been in Winnipeg for almost a decade and groups who are just arriving, and that organization identifies a need in a arriving population and like creates a program. It's very eye-opening for the two of us who are like, well, people can't have conversations on IPV when they are questioning where their kid's going to go to school tomorrow, or questioning, where can they get a job and how do they get their driver's license? Like all of those questions. That it doesn't mean that there isn't abuse happening in those situations, but that's not priority number one right now. It is
Yeah, you're
those
so busy getting everything else in your life
exactly,
sorted and figured out. You're
exactly.
like, okay, I guess I'll just put this on the shelf over here and I'll
Yeah,
deal
or
with it
it'll get
later.
better, or it's because of X, Y, Z. And then, so those have been just really powerful to attend. And our last partnership is with Norwest Community Co-op with Immigrant Center. So that's been fantastic, having a breadth of different trainings, such as psychological violence and family violence training, especially for those service providers who are working or sometimes the first point of contact for newcomers arriving. And so those are the breadth that we've been able to tap into, but that isn't exclusive of what's being offered. And so our project's wrapping at the end of March, the end of this fiscal year, which is honestly somehow like 12 and a bit weeks away. And the team, myself, Beatrice, and Kathleen, had been grappling with like, how do we end this project for it to have the most impact on community, and so it can keep these conversations going? Because what we heard from our 30 conversations is the desire to have more spaces for men, have more spaces for women, for youth, to also speak their first language and just connect with other people. And how we decided to wrap it is we've been recording in 15 different languages these short animated videos which define what violence is, what different types of abuse looks like, and where to get support. The hope is that then these can be shared with community, and it kind of has that lasting impact where it's addressing those language barriers and educational barriers that you can hear in your first language, identifying types of abuse, which is really awesome. And that's also why we were a little late to the call, is we've actively been having community members come in and do their own recordings. So we're
Wow.
really excited. Yeah, it's been really incredible and beautiful to have so many different women, and it's women who are recording it because women have been, at the center of this project, coming in and translating the script into their first language and recording in it and being excited and enthused that their community members will get to hear them speak and hear information provided in their first language.
It's so important to keep projects like that, like keep the momentum going, even if it comes to an end. Because the worst case scenario is, it stops, and then 5 years down the line, you're seeing the same problems come back.
Yeah.
All these projects, incredibly important, tackling a lot of incredibly difficult and challenging aspects of the immigrant and newcomer experience. Maybe we can just go around real quick to talk about the highlights you've had of the year, things that you're like,
Wow,
this was amazing. Just kind of keep it brief, but how about we start with you, Beatrice? What was a highlight for you this year?
Wow, just one? Okay. Other than working with an amazing team and amazing communities and amazing community leaders that have been at the forefront of making sure that, we get as much participants and participation from communities. I think my highlight, as I usually say, I'm a sibling to brothers. And it has been very impactful for me to see ethnocultural men express themselves in such an exciting manner and say, how come we were never involved in such conversations? Why would you assume that we do not want to talk about this? We understand that the majority of perpetrators of violence are men, but then statistics also show that the number of women abusing men is, catching up. It's slowly growing. And so it's been heartwarming to see that men are willing to have these conversations and they would like to be actively involved. They would like for the stereotyping to stop. But then that's a journey that all of us have to willingly take together. It takes two to tango. And so my highlight, I think my takeaway from this project is just knowing that men are willing to have these conversations. Men are willing to learn better ways to communicate to their partners. Men are willing to help in different gender roles that seem to be a trigger in relationships. Men are willing to be nurturers of their home. So that is one of my highlights. It's not what people have always thought. Men really do want to be breakers of this cycle.
Kathleen, how about yourself?
So I think for me, in terms of the project, one of the cool things that we were able to do is venture out into small centers. So while the project is based in Winnipeg, Piper and Beatrice were able to build some connections in Brandon, Nipawa, and Portage la Prairie, and head out there and connect with some ethnocultural communities out there. And I think that's one of the very important things to note is that, ethnocultural communities are developing outside of Winnipeg. While Winnipeg is very diverse, those smaller communities outside are also becoming quite diverse as well. People are choosing because of cost of living, because, finding community, they're choosing to venture out. And I think, for us to be able to build those connections with those small centers and see those ethnocultural communities out there grow and develop has been really eye-opening and also very cool to see. So I think it's been beneficial for ECCM to build those connections and find ways to support those developing, ethnocultural groups that are out there. Some of them want to form their own associations. Some of them want to form their own organizations. There's little mini ethnocultural councils that want to happen out in Brandon and Portage la Prairie specifically right now. So ECCM gets to sort of be a guide for that. And I think that has been honestly just because of this project that was able to develop. So I give huge kudos to the team for building those connections and also, venturing early mornings, drives out to Brandon and Portage la Prairie to do that. So that's been really cool to see.
Piper, take it away.
Honestly, it's just been community, I think. And I love that question, especially as we approach the end of another year and the start of a new one. been really beautiful to see how community gathers and just talking. Like, there's nothing cooler than sitting among a group of women of all diverse ages, and they are just talking about whatever they want to talk about. Half the time it's in a language that I don't speak, but just to see the joy radiate that people are able to gather and talk and normalize these experiences. And it's not even just experiences of violence, but it's talking about favorite foods. It's talking about how all of us have survived a winter in Winnipeg. Like, it's all those things that I think create more similarities than differences and ultimately do combat like wider societal biases. It's then just like seeing them out at different community events and having that friend. Like, I don't know how many different events we've been to where we just see past participants or community leaders, and they're overjoyed to see us and we're overjoyed to see them. And yeah, it's just a really great atmosphere to get to hang out and talk with community and be with community. So I'd say that's the best part.
Have any stories you'd like us to share or communities we should highlight? Leave a comment on our social media or reach out to us on our website. I'm Ryan Funk. This was You Talk, and have yourself a good one.